an exec from another team, told Mike Sando, I think the 49ers will trade Trey Lance to Tennessee. Then they'll end up with Brady, and Brady will play for 1 year. Then they have Brock as the backup. That's the chatter. They already have the defense. Brady wants to win one more. This is right up the Niners' alley. So Trey Lance to Tennessee. What do we think of the chatter from NFL executive?
What does chatter mean? I was thinking about that today. Chatter.
It means, it means somebody came up with this idea who's actually not on the Titans or the 49ers.
Yeah, to me, there's a different level of validity, right? If the chatter is like in agent circles because one agent talked to Don Yee and it's like, yeah, we've already heard some things, and it's like already like you're 1 degree of separation away. Like, this isn't that crazy. And just like, oh yeah, this the Vikings guy was bullshitting with Monty Osenfort and they were just shooting the shit and talking some different ideas. It's like, which is very possible. And that's where I think it's an easy thing to say the chatter because Rand Carthen is now the general manager of the Tennessee Titans. And I also think it's easy to push back and going, Rand Carthen is not telling you who they're trading for. Like, does Mike Vrabel like him? Because if he does, then yeah, it would be on the table. Does Mike Vrabel not like him? Then they're not doing it, right?
Yeah. Also, if you're Rand Carthen, you just got this job, but you are not Mike Vrabel's boss. So is Trey Lance the guy you're going to go bang the table for and say, Mike, I'm telling you, we got to trade for Trey Lance? Because you are really kind of putting your neck out there right away if you tell him he's got to go trade for Trey Lance. And
is there a minimum draft pick that it just doesn't make sense for the 49ers? Like, even if I don't think he's that good, I know Rand knows what we all think of him.
Right.
So let's just say we're all in agreement. Like, we think there's still some potential there, but it is what it is now. He still makes a decent amount of money. It doesn't make a sense for us to just, why would we give him to you? Because if I'm like the Titans, the chatter is trading for him. If I can get him for a 4th round pick, well, who fucking cares?
Second.
Yeah, so it's like the Titans, they would gladly trade a 4th round pick right now, right? If you just said Trey Lance was available for a 4th round pick, a lot of teams would do that. But the Niners, it would make sense to just keep him and try to, if any, at minimum, just rehab some value or see if they still got something.
He might end up as your starting quarterback.
Yeah, to me, the second, then yeah, that would put some pressure on the Titans. But is that an option? Would you trade him right now for the Titans 2nd round pick? Because I would.
Yeah, I think most people would. Right now today, the problem is I don't know who this, like, Trey Lance could end up. I might be trading my week 1 starter if I trade him today.
Because they have 3 3rd round picks, I'd argue I just keep him for a 3rd round pick. The second is where we start talking, right? Especially if it's a top 15 pick in the second. As someone in the chat mentioned, because I said the Niners were the 30th draft pick, don't forget Stephen Ross, when he cheated, he got docked the pick. So there were only 31 picks in the draft.
Oh, so
that pick is actually 29.
Good job to the chat for that one.
So, but that also means the 2nd rounders are a little bit better. I would not trade Trey Lance for a 3rd round pick, and I'm very leery that he's ever going to amount to anything, just because you still have the infrastructure of a head coach and guys that can make you better. But 2nd round pick, like, I'm sorry, I'd trade him.
Corey says, going to shake my head when Lance turns into a top 10 QB a year or 2 from now with the Niners or not. And everyone says hindsight's 2020. I'm not mortgaging my future again for Purdy. Played well, but no. The reason I would not trade Trey is not because I think he's about to be a top 10 quarterback. I don't think that. I think at this point, especially if you're pursuing Tom, or if you're not and you're just rolling both healthy, Brock as your starter, you would say that the Trey Lance draft pick it's been a failure. It's a failure, right? If Brock Purdy is your starting quarterback when both are healthy, the Trey Lance pick failed. You gave up 2 1s for a guy that didn't become your quarterback. However, Brock is hurt. You have a history of getting quarterbacks hurt. You have worked with Trey. I don't think it's, given all the crazy scenarios that have played out, I'm not saying just because right now in this moment the pick was a failure that it's impossible for Trey Lance to become a good quarterback. I'm not saying that. Maybe it can happen. On a team that has proven to need multiple quarterbacks, and you have this guy that you've invested a lot in already. I'm not saying just because you've invested a lot, you should just, continue to throw money at it. But you don't have other quarterbacks. You don't have other quarterbacks. So I'd be inclined to keep him, even if you're offering me pick 58. because I gotta now. What am I replacing with? Andy Dalton? I would just be inclined to keep Trey another year. Now maybe I'm just holding on to a depreciating asset. If that's the case, then that's the case. But the scenario right now where he ends up playing 8 games or 5 games or whatever for you next year, it's a real scenario. I mean, Brock has not played a full season of NFL quarterback, and he got hurt in the season that he played 9 games. So Trey Lance.
I just had to double check. I've been beating the Andy Dalton drum.
Yeah,
he is an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah, he's a free agent. Dalton, I think is high on the list of what makes sense for the 49ers.
And there are going to be several other teams that are going to be interested in guys. Like, you'd have to compete. That number ends up going 5 or 6. I think the question is, would you rather have basically a quarterback room accounting on your salary cap, Trey, Purdy, or essentially like $9 million, Dalton 4 or 5, or Brady, which, like you said, you could argue there's no risk, but there is the risk of if he were to finally get hurt or just him and Kyle didn't mesh, and you do invest 28 guaranteed or 31 guaranteed. Like, that is a lot for even a 1 year. You're not spreading that out over a couple of years, probably, right? Unless Parag says it actually makes more sense to do a 2-year deal. And
yeah, you probably. I wouldn't shock me if you sign a 2-year deal where it's like, an option after.
And his cap hits like $6 million this year. Push the can down the road.
Yeah. Well, when are you signing Bosa, Ayuk
this offseason?
Okay.
Bosa for sure. Ayuk
12-year contract.
Yeah, I mean, Bosa's gonna
buy his parents' house for $27 million.
Well, he's got
living it rent free.
I would imagine the Niners, right? Because they'll go, well, we got your 5th-year option, and we would 100% franchise tag you. We'll give you a 5-year extension, but it's essentially a 7-year extension, right? So you get the 5th-year option, you get the franchise tag, that money, and whatever we need to add up the differences to get you to 120 guaranteed. But it's a 5-year extension or 6-year extension based on the 5th-year option, because that franchise tag, we're counting that as a year.
I saw Cam Inman had a quote today where Bosa said he doesn't necessarily need to be the highest paid player in the league.
It does feel like he loves playing for these guys, right? Because he comes, they're good, he's awesome, the defense revolves around him, and then they don't fuck with him until August 1st. He basically just going to leave. Debo's like, am I on that plan now too? Like, do you expect to see Debo around?
Well, Debo, if you want to go work with Nick, if you want to work out with Nick, then yes, you can be on that plan. But you have to be with Nick. Like, we need to see you in the videos with the Bosas, with Joey and Nick.
Yeah. Because do you expect, like, Debo Samuel to be at non-mandatory OTA practices?
Is Brady there?
That's another thing. Like, if I'm going to trade for Aaron Rodgers, if I'm going to sign Tom Brady, like, I get it. You guys have been on your own little plan, but kind of going to need you around. And then Debo, you got to come back. Got to work with Thomas here. It's kind of serious, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I'm the Jets and I'm going to trade a 1st and 2nd round pick for Aaron, like, Aaron, you do have to come then in May, right?
Really, there's not a scenario where the 49ers don't have a situation where they need that guy, where they need Debo to show up. Where it's like, hey, man, Trey Lance hasn't thrown a pass in September. We need you to work it with him. Hey, man, you and Brock have only practiced together for like 2 months. We need you to work out together. Hey, man, Tom Brady's new here. We need you to work out with him. Hey, man, Andy Dalton's the only healthy guy we got. And who knows? He might end up being the quarterback, but he may not. By the time we get to the regular camp, he might be the 3rd string guy. But then those other 2 guys get hurt and Andy becomes the starter again, like week 3. And then you will have had to practice with him. So we just kind of need you around here.
Ayuk's like, don't worry, guys. I'll take 700 of the reps. And this year, instead of being 12th on the list of team captains, hopefully I can get up to 7th and be a captain.
Yeah, well, if Trey Lance is on the team this year, where is he in the captain voting?
Well, if Purdy's starting quarterback, is he a captain? Feels like he would be.
Where in the voting this year? 8?
Who? Debo? Yeah, he was right outside the line of the Mendoza line. He's like, oh, don't worry, Trey was right behind him. It's hard to make this team.
They do have a lot of captain-worthy players. I mean, that's legit.